So, what are you going to eat when you're in Africa?
Huh?
What are you going to eat when you're in Africa?
He's gonna suck
yeah,
on a
I mean, you're
bug's
going to have like a
ass.
bug cake,
Bug cake?
like fig cakes, cakes of figs, cakes of bugs, locust,
Bill Gates would love us.
hyena steaks.
Hyena steaks? Interesting.
Sounds remarkable.
I think hyenas are gross.
Yeah, I feel like
All the
they're
animals, they're the grossest.
They're like the Democrats
Yeah.
of the Serengeti.
They are.
Yep.
they're like giant rats.
They are. They're like giant
Like
rats.
I said, Democrats of the Serengeti.
There
I
you
wonder what
go.
they look like before the fall.
Hyenas?
Yeah.
Probably the same.
I don't know.
You think they were prettier?
I think that there's no way. I think there's.
You're
There's-
like, God doesn't have that bad taste,
Yeah,
does he?
yeah, for sure.
Well, after the fall, they had to shave their butts and walk backwards.
I didn't know that.
That's true.
Is that something that all hyenas had to do? Or
Yeah,
is that like
They're
a-
didn't
still
know
doing
that?
it.
just the leadership?
They're still doing it. Do you
Yeah,
not see the way they walk? I
yeah,
mean,
they do.
It's not hard. It's just,
gross.
yeah.
I thought that was baboons.
Yeah.
They
that's
definitely
true.
have
Well,
shaved
baboons
butts.
are a different
Okay.
deal.
Anyway, welcome back, everyone. I'm here with the wonderful Tim Clark and my father, Andrew Crapuchettes.
Hi.
Quick introduction for both of you, and feel free to add on to this. Tim, you studied at San Jose State University,
I didn't
Correct.
know that.
political
You didn't know
science
that?
Way to go.
No.
and
okay.
government.
Yes.
That's correct. And then you did Clark Media. You're the CEO and founder of Clark Media Relations.
Yes.
In
That's-
which capacity you have put many people in office.
One of the many permutations. Yeah.
They
yeah.
put
Yeah.
Some in office, some in the grave.
And then
And some
That's
just
not true.
And some
That's
just
not
left.
true.
That
Some
is
just
a
said
lie.
goodbye.
That's true.
Yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
a lie.
and then you were the White House liaison for Health and Human Services
Yep.
under a very memorable orange man.
Yep.
And then you worked as the CCO for USPTO. I'm
Yep.
not sure what that is, but
United States Patent and Trademark Office.
there we go.
Think about it.
There we go. You were vice president of communications at Lightcast, and then you are now the head of communications at Red Balloon.
Yep.
There we go. And
All the
then
things.
My father, Andrew Crapuchettes, was the CEO and founder of MZ, which is now Lightcast, for 19 years. And now you are the CEO and founder of Red Balloon, America's
story.
largest woke-free job board. So have you had anything to add on to that, or have we covered all the bases?
The reason I think that I'm sitting in the middle is because I'm the heaviest of the three of us. And I think the camera probably makes me look about 250 pounds. True?
Nope,
You could-
because some cameras add 30.
Put it in the comments.
Some
How much-
cameras
How
add
much do
30
you think
pounds.
I weigh? Yes,
Some
right.
cameras add 30 pounds. This is a very small camera.
Okay,
This is like a
okay.
15-pound camera.
It's like a 15-pound camera. Okay.
But it is a wide angle lens.
It is.
It is
I
a
know,
wide-angle
I know.
lens.
Why is he so wide?
We're getting the fridge as well as Tim.
Yeah.
Okay, so you two have, Tim, you've worked in politics and you worked in economics, even with the 2016, with Donald Trump and his task force for economics. I remember you were part of that. What is it, what brought you to those different walks? Like, what about politics or economics fascinated you so much?
Well, that's a good story. So I went to San Jose State, and I was headed towards a biochemistry degree. The discovery for the cure for cancer was motivational,
you.
right? And I was fascinated
He
by
spent some time in Wuhan.
yeah, exactly. With some short guy.
Yeah.
And I took poli-sci 1, which was general ed. And I took it from an avowed anarchist who had all the wrong ideas. And so I was the one guy that would debate him in class about freedom and liberty and all that stuff.
Yeah.
And then poli-sci 1 ended, and so I took poli-sci 2 the next semester.
There we
and
go.
Before you know it, I was telling my mom,
Sequential.
yeah, I don't think I'm going to do this biochemistry thing anymore. I think I'm going to go do poli-sci. And then I did poli-sci, and then I did marketing, and I did poli-sci, and I did marketing. And it turns out I did both together.
Yeah.
And now I sell
They
people.
walk hand in hand.
Sell people with their permission. You
Yeah.
sell.
With their permission,
With
that's
their
correct.
permission.
This is not like
sell
an
them-
1800s
I sell them in the
selling
Totally
public,
different. Yeah.
in the public consciousness. So.
Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah,
there
for
you go.
sure. Well, the thing is, economics and politics, it's all kind of a study of why people do things. Obviously, Thomas Sowell calls economics you're allocating resources among alternative and competing ends, which sounds kind of interesting, but effectively, it's how people make decisions and how they make up their minds. And I've always found people groups really, really fascinating. So, and politics have been around forever. Like, there was newspapers were trying to write bad stories about George Washington when he was running for president. Like, this is not, there's
On
nothing.
stone tablets.
There is but there's nothing new under the sun. You look at when the guy in Amazing Grace, who got slavery overturned in England,
William Wilberforce?
William Wilberforce, like,
Yep.
one of the things he did was he was constantly, like, he ran a media campaign right? It didn't just happen. He was patient, took 20 years, but he was running pamphlets and he was running marketing and he was writing books and they were giving speeches. And like, it was this whole media campaign that went into this. And even if you look back in 1776, like they had to be communicating a lot. The Federalist Papers, like it was a public communication trying to get the public to think clearly about a thing. And I think we're in a time and a place in the world where the public in general has been very ignorant of how the world works, how economics work, how politics work.
Yeah.
And so I just think it's a fascinating study, both politics and economics, of how people groups think about things, how individuals make decisions. And so I think it's one of the more fascinating subjects, and I'm bad at everything else.
Fair enough. Well,
So-
pick what you're good at.
Interestingly enough, if you don't have economic freedom, you rarely have political freedom too.
That's right. That's right.
They
They
go
all
hand
come
in
together.
hand.
That's true.
Yeah.
True story.
Interesting. Which is why, I mean, one of the things that made America so great. I mean, we're currently kind of falling apart, working on not doing that. But what would need to happen from your, in your viewpoint, both from an executive, political White House perspective, as well as from an economic perspective, you kind of put the U.S. back on the right line, where we're, as Vivek says, the U.S. used to be where all the geniuses went because it was a place of innovation where people who went out and took risks and found great discoveries were honored and respected. And so how do we get back to that point?
Yeah, it's a good question. To go back to the Wilberforce thing, the king very much wanted to shut down free speech, and so Wilberforce had to get together with his Clapham group and figure out how to project. I think we are on the right track because we have freedom of speech here, and it's being reinforced by venues like Twitter and others. So that's the first step. Can we project our message? And I feel like there's been a sea change now, backlash against the control group that wants to shut down speach.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, speech has definitely become more free as far as since Elon has bought Twitter.
Right, and the reality is that all of us want to just fix problems, right? Especially as Americans, we just want to okay, what's the microwave solution to the political despair that we have here in America? But the reality is we need to change the mindset of people. We need to help them understand freedom, understand economics, so that they're making intelligent decisions themselves, right? We can't, and this is the problem, every Marxist or Democrat, they really want to just control everything. They just want to fix things, right? And whenever you hear someone say, man, this thing is broken, I wish the government would do something about that, that's the mindset that is causing all of these problems. Because if you look to the government as your God and that's your mindset, there's no way for people to make intelligent decisions. And there's this massive knowledge problem, as economists talk about. There's no way for a central group of people to know all the things that they need to know to make an economy go well, to make a people free. You need to just let them be free. And the problem with freedom, and the reason that we in society swing back and forth between freedom and not freedom, is because freedom is dangerous, right?
Yeah.
If you're free, you can make a stupid decision. You can go bankrupt. You can starve to death.
Yeah.
You can go for a hike out in the woods and die, and that's freedom. And the problem is freedom looks a lot like a lot of responsibility and a lot of hard work, and bad things can happen. Businesses go under when there's freedom. Schumpeter talks about the creative destruction. So you have bad things that happen during freedom, but overall the society wins a lot because of it, right? And people it brings dignity to individuals to work hard and fail sometimes when they get that feedback loop of profit and loss, but that's how they build dignity and be able to think clearly about the world. And so I think it's going to be a very hard transition, right? You have all these government workers, and if half of them got laid off, which I think would be a good first step, that would be a good start. Well, they're all going to have jobs, and there's going to be all this outcry about the economic hardship. And if you stop propping people up, and it's either you work or you don't eat, some people are going to starve to death.
Right.
And that's going to be really hard, and I think that's going to be why this transition is really hard if we want to get back to a nation that is free, where people think clearly, where we have individuals who are taking responsibility. That's going to be a really hard transition. It has to happen at some point. Right. The growth of government has to stop at some point. Right.
So two things off of that. First, as Christians, we do believe there is a place for the civil government. In a perfect world, there, or not in a perfect world, but in a country run correctly, there would be a civil government. What place does the government have? Like, how much should we be looking to them to solve this problem, and how much is it a problem of we just need to figure this out ourselves at an individual level?
Well, we are in America, we're a government of the people, by the people, for the people.
Right.
So we have to figure it out. Whatever direction we go, the people, we have to figure it out. And that's why we have to have this national conversation about where we want to go. And that's why we need the freedom of information to do that. Your government, a good government is a gift from God, right? It's a blessing to the people, but government reflects the will of the people. And if the people are soft and allow the government to just run amok, then the government's going to run amok. And right now you see this conversation taking place where people are discovering what the government has been doing that they may or may not have been aware of. And we have to play the long game, but over the next decade, 2 decades, we'll see how the people respond.
Yeah, absolutely. Why is it that the leftist and Marxist types always want to restrict freedom of speech? Throughout history, it's always been, you're not allowed to speak.
I would think for the leftists, I think government is their God. I think that's an accurate statement. And so power is how you get to their God, to government, to control, right? And the power to control. You see that all the time. I mean, when East Germany, or when the Soviets shut down and divided Germany in two, it wasn't the United States that was putting a wall around East Germany. It was the Soviets who wanted control and power, and then they controlled the state TV and the messaging and everything else. And if you tried to get over that wall to go to the free side, you got shot.
Yeah.
So that's not the free countries doing that. That's the controlled dictatorial countries and those who believe that, government is their God.
And part of that is if government's your God, then there necessarily are blasphemy laws, right? And so you're not allowed to say bad things about God. And so you see those blasphemy laws all over the place of things you're not allowed to even talk about, or else you're going to be tarred and feathered, and you've now committed a unpardonable sin.
Right.
And control of information, they feel like, and at a very small level, this is part of it, is when you respect people as individuals, you want them to make their own decisions. Mm-hmm. I don't give my kids all the information that I have, and I don't give them complete freedom of speech. If they say something nasty to mom, then they are going to get in trouble for that, right? True. And that's the thing, is they're not free individuals because I'm still training them up. And the problem is government sees the citizens as, in one sense, kind of like their children, their subjects that need to be controlled and can't be given all this information because they can't be trusted with that information. You can't handle the truth. Right. And that's actually just disrespecting the people in your society. If you can't give them free speech, you can't give them the information, you're saying you're not an adult. You're not someone who could handle it. So that's part of it, is you need to respect people and respect that they're going to make bad decisions, but they need to make their own decision. Yeah.
But do you think that the government is really doing that, or the people in government are doing that, restricting free speech, not telling everyone everything, out of compassion for us, out of, we don't want to expose you to the hard truth?
I think they tell themselves some of that. I think there are some good people in government who are completely misguided and don't understand economics or any of those things. And then there are some real evil actors, right? That Hideous Strength, there were a lot of people at, Wither and Frost. They were definitely evil all the way down. But there were a lot of people who thought they were doing well. Even Mark thought he was, being one of the cool kids and writing these lies in the newspaper on purpose, but he didn't understand the whole plan. And if he had, he would have been like, oh, no, I'm not going to do that. So I think there's a lot of people in government that are good. They're trying to do their best. They have the best of intentions. The structure is wrong. And there are people who are legitimately evil trying to do bad things to the world. Yeah. Agree? Disagree?
Yeah, no, I agree. I think it was Thomas Jefferson that said government's first role is to protect the liberties of the people. And I think there's a lot of people in government that don't understand that. Yeah. They've never been taught that, or maybe have lost that vision. I worked in government, right? I met a lot of people who were super dedicated and very proud to serve the American people in their role. But I'm not sure I met a lot of people with the understanding that government's first role is to protect the liberty of the people.
Interesting. And that's why the Second Amendment was created, was as a protection for
Well,
us.
That's
from,
why the entire Bill of Rights was created,
Right.
because
Yes.
in the constitutional debates, they were concerned that the Constitution wasn't strong enough in preserving these fundamental rights.
Yeah. So obviously America was founded on the principles of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. So we were at a point as a country at one time where people had that freedom, not only of speech, but of thought, and they could, they could go out there and they could starve, but they could also build an empire. How has America shifted from that to where we are now, and why has that shift come about?
Well, that's a good question. So the Boston Massacre, do you know who represented the British soldiers?
The Indians, right?
No, which
sorry.
lawyer represented the British soldiers in the Boston Massacre?
I don't know.
John Adams.
Oh, really?
Now, would we today allow John Adams the freedom to represent the British soldiers and then later elect him president of the United States? Or would we cancel him and
Definitely
be done?
not,
Right?
no.
Would we not allow
Remove
him
his social media.
Would we not allow him the freedom to have that debate and explain why?
Right.
Yeah.
And he actually won. He won the case.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a big change and that's why I'm so excited about venues like Twitter, because we need to have this give and take.
Right.
We
Right.
need to be able to tell people why we believe what we believe, why they believe what they believe, and then have that exchange of ideas.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, when you have churches in America that have lost their way and don't believe the Bible, then everything else is going to follow. So I would point to that in America. We have a lot of churches that are afraid of speaking the truth. They're afraid of what the Bible actually says. They don't want to say it out loud, and they know if they do, that it will cause they'll have a congregational meeting before they know it, and be in all kinds of trouble. And
Afraid of conflict.
Yeah, they're afraid of conflict, and the reality is that the Bible has conflict because we need to be able to debate things, right, in a public square. I think this is really, really important, and we need pastors that speak truth. And I think you start to do that, and I think things turn around in a hurry. And when I say a hurry, not in 2 years, but in 10 years or 20 years, I think we could be in a very different spot as a nation if we just have churches that believe the Bible and preach it unapologetically, and we allow debate, and we don't try and force our view on anyone, right? Because the temptation is, okay, well, the liberals forced a view on us, we're going to force a view, this is the way you have to think about things. But we can't there's no quick fix. And I think all the bad things happened over time, and we need to understand it's going to take a minute to fix things. It's not going to happen overnight.
Yeah. Okay. That makes sense. So what are things individually that people can do, as they're seeking themselves to at least bring their own small patch of the USA back to a place where freedom is? Because obviously we don't have the power most people don't have the power to tell the government, this is what we need to do to have freedom of speech. This is how it needs to act. Like, we live under their rule in a way. So what are things people need to do individually that can make an impact and can bring things back?
I think within the balance of the law, you speak out. You show up to the school board meetings. You make sure you understand what's being taught in your schools and elsewhere. But something even more fundamentally, which I heard a church pastor preach once, is you make sure that your children and your grandchildren are properly educated. They understand the tenets of freedom and liberty. They understand, why they serve their God, what their systematics are. You make sure that you pass on to the next generations what they need to know, because it's a long game. Again, we could both of us could be dead and gone before this country gets back on that track, but we have to start now.
Yeah, I mean, obviously raise kids well. You look at what Moms for America is doing. I just think what their whole thing. She's like, well, why don't we train mothers what the Constitution actually says and how the country was founded? Because those mothers will then communicate it to their children, and then the next generation is going to be even better. Well, that's a great long game, and it's a good way to think about it. So I think we need to be doing things like that. I say all the time, do one thing different. Speak the truth. Don't be afraid. Go to Red Balloon. Go to Public Square. Participate in the parallel economy. Just change one behavior this week, and then change another behavior next week. Don't feel like you have to do this dramatic thing. It's like a diet. You don't want to be like, okay, I'm going to starve myself to death so that I can get skinny. Right. You want to ease into things.
Yeah.
And so just change one thing that's sustainable and do it again. And then be brave, because when people are brave, it gives courage to people around them.
Yeah, and obviously, to your point, the family is, and also yours, the family is extremely important. So much so that it has been violently attacked. I mean, not only with the LGBTQ, whatever it is, HDTV movement, but also the abortion and all of that have drastically destroyed many families in America, as well as the ability to divorce, no-fault divorce, all those kinds of things have chipped away at the family because the family is that's where free speech is born.
And the public school system. The public school system has been a very deliberate attack on the family. It's been a deliberate attack on freedom and America and our kids. And I think we have many conservatives have just sat on the sidelines and just watched it happen. I mean, to your point, do you know you can run for the school board even if you don't have your kids in the school? Like, you can. Like, there's no reason not to. You might not win, but you could win. And you can make changes even if you're a grandparent. Like, you don't have to be a parent of kids in the school to run for the school board. It's a public office. So there's ways to make changes that are dramatic, because the public school system has done an enormous amount of damage to this country, in my opinion.
Yeah, well, you have to. I think it was Ronald Reagan that said that freedom is only one generation away from extinction, and every generation has to stand up and fight for those things, like going to a school board, like understanding what the public forum is, not being scared into your corner and not speaking out. Look at Billboard Chris, who goes out to campuses with just wearing a billboard that says there are only two genders. And he started this a year and a half ago. No one knew who he was. Now he's got over 1 million followers on Twitter.
Yeah.
He's out at these campuses. He's forcing debate.
Right.
And that's just one guy that stood up and realized within the venue of free speech, he had this ability to do this.
Also, a little side note, if you're watching at home, the person who's lit up the most is the most holy.
We're going to put a little halo right here.
It's not that the sun's in my eyes. It's just that I'm exuding righteousness. That's
nice.
What's happening
That's
right
good.
now.
I'm glad for
Yeah.
that.
So both of you are experts in this, you call it finding the responsive chord and striking that. But for different reasons. Obviously, you work in marketing and you work in starting businesses. So maybe talk a little bit about how you find that responsive chord, both as someone who is creating a marketing product and someone who's creating a product that obviously for a company that you would buy. How do you find that responsive chord and use it to help people understand and have compassion for what you're saying?
Yeah, so Tony Schwartz, who's counted as the father of modern political consulting, coined the phrase responsive chord when he worked for Lyndon B. Johnson against Barry Goldwater in that campaign. And what his concept was is if you state something that most people feel fundamentally in their being, and if you state that right, most people will nod their heads and say, yes, that's correct, and it'll move them to action. He called that the responsive chord. If I say to parents in America, for example, the school system is a jump ball now for your kids, most will say, yeah, that's right, and they'll attach to my message because that's a responsive chord. That's what they believe after seeing all these things. As a communicator, your job is to find that responsive chord, see where it syncs with your message and what's going on. In Red Balloon, for example, the freedom to think and express yourself and work without cancellation. You shouldn't be canceled at your job just because you happen to go to church or you happen to want to make your own medical choices. Most people will say, yeah, that's right, that's a responsive chord. Right. So we have to hit that with as much force and power in our messaging as we can to evoke that attachment to our message.
Yeah.
Well, and I think that the reality, you have to care about people. I mean, I know that's deep and it's hard for me. Trust me. You have to care about people because to understand what the responsive chord is, you need to actually know what they're thinking about. What do all of these people care about? That's not going to be a responsive chord for everyone, right? There's going to be people on the left who are like, no, I don't believe in that thing. But I always tell salespeople, you always want to find a point of connection with whoever you're talking to as quickly as possible, right? Because if you're in a foreign country and you meet somebody from your town in Idaho, you're like, oh, and you
Holy
have this
smokes.
instant connection.
Yeah.
You want to go grab a drink with them or a lunch with them.
Right.
I'm a San Francisco Giants fan. If I meet another Giants fan, I have this, tenuous though it may be, connection with them
Right.
over that. And that is, you need to care about them enough to know what they're thinking about, what they're caring about. And if you care about it too, then you can build products that are going to solve problems for them. You can, when I first launched Red Balloon, I had people write and be like, oh my word, I can't believe no one's done this before. Thank you so much. And then I had a couple people be like, that is the dumbest thing I've ever heard in my life, right? So don't think that there's one responsive chord for everybody.
Right.
You want it for your people and your audience, whether it's political or your business audience, your sales audience, and you want to solve a problem for them. And you can only do that if you care. You can only do that if you care about them and you care what they think about and what they're worried about. And worry is a very strong thing. If people are worried about the public school system, that's going to be a responsive chord. People are worried about their job and their ability to pay their bills and feed their kids and pay their mortgage. So they were worried about that. And if you can state what they maybe haven't said out loud but are thinking, and then here's what needs to be done about it in a very succinct way, that's how you grab someone's attention at scale, in my opinion.
Yeah.
Incidentally, I think the left is far better at using the worry responsive chords than the right is.
Yeah.
And you see that all the time,
sure.
where their messaging is about worry and fear, but not about solutions and improvement. It's
Right.
just worry and fear.
Yeah. Let me start the camera again. Sorry.
Oh,
Mic drop. Halftime.
we're back. We're live.
From Moscow, Idaho. So how do you find that responsive chord? Is it something where you trial and error, you just ask around? Is it you have a
Dumb luck.
group meeting?
Dartboards.
Dartboards and dumb luck.
No, technically, when you have a healthy budget, you have a lot of different studies that you perform. You could do it. You start with a focus group regimen, and then you go with some survey work. You do a regression analysis. Maybe you do something a little more intensive where you've got a very small group, but there's ways to do it. But we're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars of research to get there.
Yeah. And not everyone has that.
Or you wing it. You
Or
say,
you wing it.
I think this is going to work, and then you just poke at it and have fun.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes sense. And then you talked about the Democrats have used this more effectively. What have been some of the more effective responsive chord?
So look at California. Why does California keep voting for itself? People that take away their freedoms, that spend their money into. California went from a $100 billion or whatever it was surplus to a $40-50 billion debt, just in 1 year, right? And they're spending money. And why do Californians keep electing these people? Well, because the Democrats are very good at the messaging of Republicans will take away your right to choose. They're going to force you to have babies. That's basically their messaging, and it's a fear message.
They're going to force you to have a baby.
Yeah,
Oh, no.
right. Well,
I'm scared.
You can't have a debate in that context. You can't say, no, actually what we want to do is simply, educate. We want to help young women, and we want to give them all the facts. Or you can't have that debate because the fear is so strong. And so in California, which is a failed state, they keep electing their leaders overwhelmingly because the Democrat Party is so good at the fear responsive chord.
Yeah, that makes sense. Go ahead.
Yeah, I don't know that I have a ton to add. It's just, and we have to, and the temptation would be to just find our own fear responsive chord.
Mm-hmm.
And I think sometimes that's reality because there are fears that we can solve on the other direction, right?
Yeah.
But I also think that the longer play that isn't always as immediately effective is to educate people and help them to think clearly and have a positive message and not just a negative message. But it is, it's tricky because we know that fear
sells.
What do they say? 4 times as strong an emotion as joy, right? Or
Right.
whatever it is.
Yeah.
The point is that it will motivate you to action in a way that most other things won't. And so you need to make sure that you don't overuse that because also that wrecks people. It doesn't teach them to think clearly about things. It just gets this fight or flight response from them. So you just have to be careful about it.
Yeah, yeah. But it's good to use some emotions, maybe not fear, but some emotions to draw your people in.
Yeah, you have to.
Yeah. Okay. Is in both of your opinions, has politics become too important, because there's a lot of talk constantly, it seems, even throughout the 4 years that we'll have a president, about what about the next president, what about the last president, what about this president. Have those things become too important, and have the more small town politics become far less important, far less focused on than they should be?
That's a good question. I think politics has always been part of our fabric as a nation. I mean, they accused George Washington of picking Washington, D.C. because he wasn't too far away and his land property would go up. And you're like, really? You're gonna write that in a newspaper? And they did. They accused John Adams of being senile or being insane, basically, just mental. And a newspaper published that. Really?
Yeah.
You're gonna do that? And the stuff they went after Jefferson for, it was just all run of the mill. When George Washington decided that he didn't want to run for a second term and he ended up doing it, you should read through some of his memoirs at that time. After term one, he's like, dude, this is awful.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just think it's always been part of the fabric. And that's why, Donald Trump comes along and he sends out some mean tweets and people get upset, and you say, you know what are you doing? This is our politics. We've been rough and tumble for 200 plus years.
Yeah.
Well, and I'd say that's in America, but I think politics are just in the fabric. Like, you read all through the Bible, how do you keep track of time? Well, Caesar Augustus, right? So generally, whoever is the politician of the time is how time is kept. Cyrus was king, and this is what happened, or the decree went out, and Caesar Augustus. Anyway, the point is, there's all these politicians, and we know them because that's how you keep time. It is an important part of our society, always has been, right? The Book of Kings, the whole thing is about who are the leaders. So I don't think that we should, and I think unfortunately Christians politics are bad, I'm going to run away entirely. Whereas if you read your Bible, no, politics are just part of who we are. That's okay.
Right.
And I would say the marketing side of politics is also just who we are. Genghis Khan, when he was coming to cities that he was about to sack, he would actually he would place articles in whatever their publications or newspapers or pamphlets, and would talk about all the horrible things Genghis Khan had done to the last city, so that often by the time he showed up, the gates were open and people had themselves already handcuffed. We give up, please don't massacre us like the last crowd. It was a marketing campaign for a political end, and it was extremely effective. He actually didn't do half the things that he said he did, but it got people so terrified that he didn't have to fight most of the cities. Yeah, which is very efficient. Yeah, and I just that's clever. So anyway, point is, I think it's just part of who we are, and I think we need to stop being afraid of politics. We as Christians need to realize it's part of the fabric of how God built the world. We have leaders, there's authority, there's structure, and we need to lean into it, and we need to not remove God and the Bible from politics. We need to realize that God is king, Jesus is king of everything, including politics, and politics needs to be redeemed. It doesn't need to be abolished. And I think the problem is people assume that it either needs to be abolished or let's just have it the way it is, and neither of those are right.
Yeah. Christians and conservatives, I feel have a tendency to, let's just keep our heads down, let's raise our families, let's, do our own thing, go to church, play football on Saturdays, just live our life, don't try and ruin our lives. But on the other side of that, you have the people who don't really do anything with their lives. They're just there as activists. They're just spending their time campaigning out there with the signs, all on Twitter, on social media, all over the place. What is the right balance, you think, between I'm just going to do my thing, I'm going to raise my family because that's going to have generational impact, and also I need to make sure that the politics in my town, the economics in my town don't fall to waste?
Well, that's a good question. I think we have to be aware of what's going on. It's part of raising our family, is making sure that we have a free society in which to operate. So a well-rounded person is going to go to church, is going to take care of his wife or his spouse and family, make sure that his career and calling is taken care of, but also be aware of what's happening in civics and be part of that. I just balance. Yeah, there are people. Did you know you could pay yourself if you run for Congress? If you run for the U.S. Senate or Congress or the President of the United States, you can open a federal committee and you can actually pay yourself a salary. And there are some people that just do that.
Yeah.
And you ask yourself, why is this knucklehead on the ballot again? Well, he's on the ballot because he's raising money because he's paying himself.
Yeah.
And that
I need to run for Congress.
I would
is what
argue
I'm
that
learning.
that's a little unbalanced, I would say. But I think you need to be active and you need to be involved and you need to be aware. You've been given this great gift. It's called, government, again, by the people, for the people, of the people, and we have to preserve and protect it.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's just understanding priorities. And I also think we have, as a society, become pretty lazy. There's a lot of people that talk about work-life balance, and that just means work the minimum number of hours that you're getting paid for, and then watch TV and drink beer, or play golf, or go fishing, or play poker, or whatever your things are. Yeah. We have a hobby-rich society.
Don't go fishing.
Right? And those things are fine, but we have a hobby-rich society where the Lord said, 6 days shall you labor, not
right.
40 hours a week shall you labor.
Yeah.
Right? And then you just need to look at the priorities. Okay, so if I work a lot and I have lots of money and my kids don't know their dad, that's a fail, right?
Yep.
But if I never work and their kids know their dad really well and they know that he's a lazy you-know-what, that's also a fail, right? Mm-hmm. And so you have to balance things. And there's not enough of everything. There's not enough time to do all the things all the time. So you have to just have this balancing act. And I think, unfortunately, we have deprioritized political involvement in the Christian church to our detriment. And so it needs to be farther up the priority list. It does not need to be way at the top of the priority list. It needs to, your walk with God, your time with church, your family,
right.
your vocation. Those need to trump these things. But you need to prioritize, right?
Yeah.
And so, but I think it's fallen way below all the hobbies that we have in prioritization.
Yeah.
And I think we have way more time than we give ourselves credit for.
Yeah.
And we have a society that has gotten kind of lazy. And
yeah.
so I think we need to be doing more.
Why is that we've kind of ignored politics and the civil sphere?
Because it's hard. I think you had a lot of people who they thought it was dirty, and it is dirty, right? Mm-hmm. The temptation for sin in politics is enormous, right? I remember I was at the White House. I told you this story, and I'm waiting for a meeting, and with my colleague there, and all of a sudden the Secret Service guy comes in. He's like, "You two, sit down on the couch." I'm like, "Okay." And it was just, and then we wait there for about 30 seconds, and then Mike Pence walks through. And, and he's affable and high and everything, and, but he has his entourage and the whole thing. And then as soon as he went through, they're like, "Okay, you can stand up, do whatever you want." Well, the problem is that would go to your head in a hurry. That would be hard to not have it go to your head, right? If everywhere you went, people were like, "Yes, sir," and sitting, and like, you start to think you're the king of the world. You're all that in a bag of chips.
Yeah. And you almost are.
Right. But that's the problem, is very few men can fight this sinful temptation of pride and arrogance that comes along with that. And so Christians saw that in the same way that we've seen people get drunk, and because we've seen people get drunk, we're going to never drink alcohol and we're going to call it sinful. Because we've seen people dance in a way that is ungodly, no dancing ever. Because whatever it is.
Because technology can be used for ill. Let's not use it at all.
Let's not do any technology at all, right? And so, but the problem is politics are exactly that. And so many Christians ran away because they didn't want to fall into the temptations that are associated with politics. And it's real, even in a small town like this, right? Mayor Betke loves to walk around and hear greetings on this corner, like Jesus said about the Pharisees. Oh, it's been around forever, right?
Yeah.
So this is just the way it is. When you're in a leadership position, you have much, much, much harder time fighting the temptation of pride and arrogance. It is ridiculously difficult. Even as a CEO of a company, it can go to your head in a hot minute. And then all kinds of other sins come scurrying in along with it, right?
Right.
And so I think that's part of the reason we've seen people escape this. But like alcohol, like dancing, like all of these things, we need to redeem these things. We need to enjoy these things. We need to use them to the glory of God.
Yeah.
And I think Christians have been afraid of that. So I think that's why Christians ran away. I don't know. What do you think?
Well, I don't disagree. I think a caveat to that, too, is that it's a rough and tumble world. A lot of Christians find that distasteful. We used
sure.
to, in San Jose, when I started out 35 years ago, I was trying to register voters in churches. We call them the frozen chosen because they're like, no, this isn't for me. I don't get involved in that world.
Yeah, all you have to do is vote. Just
Yeah,
show up.
right. Yeah. But it was just
Makes a
distasteful.
world of difference.
And even with, again, I go back to my last boss, Donald Trump. He would send out some very hard-edged tweets and things. And so some Christian folks, some people of faith that I know, said, yeah, I'm not voting for that guy again. He said, yeah, but he's the first guy that got, Roe v. Wade overturned. But you're not voting for him because it was a distasteful tweet.
Because he's got a hard edge.
Right. And that's just, I think Christians find that the arena is hard for them sometimes to adjust to, but they should. I mean, let's get out and project our side.
Yeah. So the freedom economy has been gaining momentum, obviously, with Public Square, Red Balloon, a variety of other companies, Old Glory Bank, and such. Part of that, I think, is probably a response to not only COVID and the incredible outlash that government had for that, but also just the increasing attempted restrictions. How do we not lose this moment and that drive to change the political and the economic sphere in America?
That's a great question. I mean, the left's playbook was entertainment, education, and now corporations, right?
Yeah.
So they're picking these things off, and it's the backlash against the corporations that we see now that has really given a lot of momentum behind Public Square, Red Balloon, and some of the others. How do we not lose it? Well, we continue to grow. I mean, it's snowballing. It's getting to a point where the momentum carries itself, and we just keep it moving. But we have to be true to it too. I mean, if we're going to talk about freedom to be who you are, look at Dana White in the UFC fights. He was asked, "Do you put your fighters on a leash?" Or you had some fighter talking about the LGBTQ issue. How much leash you're going to give them? And Dana White turned around and he says, "I don't put my guys on a leash. I don't tell anybody what to say about anything. Period." So that's the purest position, and that's what attracts a lot of people.
Sean Strickland.
Yeah, it was Sean Strickland you're talking about. Yeah. So.
Well, I would also point to what does the Bible do? Like, how often does the word remember used in the Old Testament, in the New Testament?
Yeah.
It's constant. And so how do we get a generation to not fall back to sleep? Because I do think conservatives have woken up at scale. They're deciding they want to push back at scale. It should be very encouraging. These businesses, these fledgling little businesses, are gaining enormous amounts of momentum in a small amount of time because everyone's waking up and being like, oh my word, what in the world is going on here? So I think those are really good things. But the way that we get people to not go back to sleep is everyone needs to remember, right?
Yeah.
Israel was told, you need to remember how God saved you out of Egypt. You need to remember what Pharaoh did. Because when you don't remember what Pharaoh did, you can only remember the good things about what was before. And this is, again, what I said in the beginning. When we start to have freedom, actual freedom, it's more dangerous. It's going to be harder. There's a lot more personal responsibility that's going to have to be taken.
There's a hard edge.
There's a hard edge to it, right? And so we're going to have to remind people, yes, this is harder. Yes, that business just failed because they weren't propped up by XYZ. But we have to remind them of what COVID was like, what the mask mandates were like, what that fear that they felt. And again, I don't want to jump up and down on fear too much. The fear that they felt of, if I don't take this vaccine, I'm going to lose my job. I'm not going to be able to feed my kids. We're going to be homeless, right? Unfortunately, we need to continue to remind people of those things. And so, the Bible tells us to remember all the time because we tend to forget really fast.
Yeah. How do we, you talked about the snowballing effect and it's kind of turning into its own momentum. How do we keep I've seen many businesses get big and then they get complacent and then they kind of turn left and, you were talking about it's hard to resist pride when you are doing so well. How do we keep these freedom economy businesses, these pro-freedom businesses, from when they get big, because they will, because this is a movement that people align with? How do we keep them from not turning woke?
From not turning woke? Well, you remember, right? You remember why you're there. And how do you keep the momentum going? Is you free up the path for it to survive and go, and you give it as much energy behind it as you can. You're committed to it. I feel like at Red Balloon, everybody at Red Balloon is committed to the freedom economy. No one is there just to have a job. And so that helps, right? Because you're giving it that extra push, much like in campaigns, right? Everybody, when in 2016, I ran a bunch of states for Donald Trump. Nobody was coming in to volunteer just because they loved the campaign environment. They were there because they wanted that guy to win.
They love the
mission.
mission.
And so they gave that extra oomph that it takes to go. And I feel like the freedom economy has that, and will have that for a long time.
And we need to remind people, because it will be at some point when there's good money in the freedom economy. Right now, there's not good money in the freedom economy.
We're trying.
There will be, Lord willing. But there will be good money at some point. There will be big, meaningful businesses that people are going to want to come into and protect. And the reason that things, I think, generally end up drifting left if given enough time and nobody fighting it is because you want to protect things. And people on the left are way better about throwing a big fit if you don't say the right thing, if silence is violence, or if you do say the wrong thing, they're going to throw a fit, whereas people on the right aren't going to. And so this protection mentality causes things to drift left. It just does. As you get bigger, you're trying to keep the people happy who are screaming the most. That's going to take you left. And so it's going to take leadership that remembers why we started, what we were responding to, and who have the backbone to say, no, we're going to hold the line on this. Even though there's going to be a huge temptation to be respectable, to be the type of organization that somebody who totally disagrees with us, well, it'd be okay because they can come work here because we want to be out accepting to everybody, and you start to drift left. And so the only way for employees and the whole freedom economy to remain free is for the leaders to hold the line and have a backbone. Yeah,
but should the conservatives be because you talked about the leftists are the ones who are more prone to scream when they don't like something. Should conservatives be more that way, or is there kind of because there's kind of a turn the cheek mentality for a lot of conservatives. Should we be the screamers, or should we?
I don't think so. I don't think that we should get shrill and be that. We should be, as a young man is going to be a young man someday, it's going to come to me and talk to my daughters. I want to see a young man who has this humble confidence, and that feels like those don't go together, humble and confidence, but that's what I want. We have to hold the line, and I mean, obviously, always look to Christ. What did Christ do? Well, Jesus went to the temple and he overturned tables on occasion. So the zeal for the Lord's house overwhelmed him. Mm-hmm. Okay, so that's okay. You should know when to fight, and you should be willing to strap in and fight.
And be angry. And
go after it. But at the same time, when I ran my last business, every time the board came with a new stupid idea, I held the line on every little thing. And I remember that even members of the executive team would be like, do we really need to fight everything? I'm like, I'm not fighting everything. I'm just unwilling to move on anything, even little things, because I know if I move on a little thing, then I'm going to move on another little thing. And then after 10 years, I've lost everything.
Yeah, you don't want to lose all the hills you have to die on.
Right, but I don't think we should be the shrill whiners that the left has become. We just need more people who are brave and are unaffected by that. We need to be Tom Bombadil in that situation. Yeah. My opinion.
Yeah.
That's the first Tom Bombadil reference of the day.
Yes. There you go. Congratulations.
That's good.
Yeah. As we're kind of wrapping this up, any places people should find you, follow you, not on the street, hopefully, but on social media, any projects we should look forward to?
Have you ever been in a street fight?
No.
Neither have I, and I've always thought I've wanted to.
You almost were in Washington, D.C.
I've been real close. No, actually, it wasn't Washington, D.C. It was in Arkansas, and I was downtown, and a big old street fight broke out literally across the street. And I was a little bit sad that it didn't break out on my side of the street, because I've always wanted to be in a street fight, but no luck. So anyway, if you want to follow me, it's
on
fine.
The street,
I'll punch you.
That's good. Check out Red Balloon, all the stuff we're doing there.
Yeah.
That's good stuff.
And a Crapuchette at Twitter, at a Crapuchettes, and it's the normal spelling of Crapuchettes.
Yep. We'll put links down below. Thank you, gentlemen, for coming on. I really appreciate it. And
thank you.
Hope this helped anyone watching.